Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s with this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, 1987 at online booksellers everywhere. I just got through watching the trailer for DC's new Blue Beetle movie. Now, this Blue Beetle movie is an adaptation of the Jaime Reyes character who was introduced around 2005 or 2006 during the countdown to the Infinite Crisis when DC decided to murder the popular second Blue Beetle character Ted Kord by having him assassinated by Maxwell Lord, who shot him in the head. And after Ted Kord wound up being murdered by Max Lord, DC decided to introduce a new Blue Beetle who was a part of a diversity campaign where they had a Hispanic Blue Beetle, a black Firestorm, and an Asian Atom, and they decided to introduce this new character as part of their merchandising on shows like Batman, Brave, and The Bold. Now, this character has received a mixed reaction because many Ted Kord fans were upset about the death of Blue Beetle, and they weren't really too happy about Jaime Reyes taking over the role, but DC continued to push this character as part of their merchandising, and this movie is another part of that ongoing push to try to push this character and make them more popular mainstream. Unfortunately, what I saw in the trailer was not really impressive to me as related to the character. In that whole trailer that I saw was a desperate attempt to copy Marvel Studios, and I saw many sequences in this Blue Beetle film that were basically cut and pasted from previous Marvel Studios films such as Iron Man and Spider-Man Homecoming. That's basically what this film is, a cheap copy of Iron Man and Spider-Man Homecoming, and the whole film's trailer feels like a really poor, uninspired attempt to try to copy both of those films and try to copy the story of both of those films while throwing in a little 2002 Spider-Man to give us some sort of hero we're supposed to relate to. Now, this adaptation of Blue Beetle, again, follows the story of Jaime Reyes as he inherits the scarab of the Blue Beetle. And as he inherits the scarab of the Blue Beetle, he gets these powers of this alien character, of this alien armor, and this alien armor basically comes across like a really poor copy of 2008's Iron Man, mixed up with the story of Spider-Man Homecoming. So with the Jaime Reyes character, I'm not really seeing anything that answers a critical question that most screenwriters have to answer, and that question is, why should we care? I didn't see much of a reason to care about Jaime Reyes' character as a hero. No, I saw mostly the gimmicks of the Blue Beetle armor, but I didn't see any really reason to relate to Jaime Reyes as a person the way I did with Tony Stark, where I saw a character transformation arc of this guy who was basically disconnected from the world, learning how to reconnect with the world through his armor and go looking to protect people from the weapons he created and looking to save lives. I didn't see a story of that magnitude, and I didn't see any sort of story. I just saw it's just this kid who he's given this scarab by somebody else, and then he never really earns anything, and that's a big problem I'm seeing with this Blue Beetle movie. We're not seeing a hero's journey. I mean, it's just basically, hey, somebody gave me a scarab, and I now have these powers, but that's just not enough to make me care about Jaime Reyes. It's not enough to make me get interested enough to say, I want to spend $15 to go see Jaime Reyes at the theater. No, I need a lot more as related to substance, and sadly, when I'm looking at this Blue Beetle movie, it's a lot a flash of special effects, but nothing of substance to make me care about this movie, to say, hey, this is a movie I want to see, and this is a movie I want to spend money to go out here and spend time to go out here and watch. Now, that's a problem in and of itself, based if this film was a part of the DC Extended Universe, and the DC Extended Universe was still canon. But at the time of the release of this movie, it's going to be a big time problem, because if The Flash is coming in June and is setting the Flashpoint, which resets the DC Extended Universe into the DC Cinematic Universe, then there's less reason to care about this Blue Beetle movie, because Flashpoint has basically reset the DC Universe, and if the DC Universe is reset under Peter Safran and James Gunn to be the new canon, then nobody really has a reason to care about this movie at that point. So I'm looking at where this film has been placed in the schedule, and it's looking to me like this film is basically being set up again to be garbage that they're taking out, and they're taking out the trash on this movie, because it's no longer a canon part of the DC Extended Universe. It's no longer a movie that has any connection to anything, and there's no reason to care about this movie based on what I saw in these very bland and generic visuals, which are basically copy, cut, and pasted from Iron Man and Spider-Man Homecoming. And that's a big problem with most of these DC movies. They're too busy trying to copy the MCU, and sadly the MCU itself has gone out of vogue. And since the MCU has gone out of vogue, people really have less reason to watch a Blue Beetle movie. Again, an obscure third or fifth tier character in the DC universe, and there's less reason to watch this movie at this point, because the MCU one is out of vogue and people are just burnt out on superhero movies, and there's nothing special here. This movie basically feels like another product off the assembly line of the WB and Disney assembly lines, which are churning out DC superhero and Marvel superhero movies like GM churned out Chevy Chevettes and Chevy Citations, and they're not really having any sort of regard of quality like they did in the 80s when they produced those Chevrolet Chevettes and Chevrolet Citations, basically junk disposable cars that had no real long-term value. And the same thing with Blue Beetle. It's a superhero movie that basically has no long-term value because it's no longer a part of the DC Cinematic Universe. It is no longer a canon movie, and nobody has a reason to go watch what I see to be, again, another mediocre, generic superhero origin movie that we've already seen done better in 2002 Spider-Man, and we've seen done better in 2008's Iron Man. There are much better films than this one, and this one, all it boasts is basically, it says, oh, it's a Latino superhero, but the whole thing is, outside of Jaime's ethnicity, there's not much here to say that you could care about. There's no villain to really drive the conflict. There's no real story as related to this character, and it looks like WB, as I see it, basically is going to have another flop on their hands, like Shazam! Fury of the Gods, because this film looks like another, again, mediocre movie, and Warner Brothers doesn't have much faith in this movie. That's why they're taking out the trash in August and dumping this movie to take a loss on it. So when I look at this Blue Beetle movie, again, I'm not impressed with it. It's just very generic and very bland. Nothing special here to watch as related to this movie. I mean, it's got everything we've seen in a dozen other superhero movies. I mean, we see Blue Beetle splitting a bus. Well, we saw Spider-Man dealing with him splitting a Staten Island ferry. Done already. We're seeing Jaime Reyes going up into space. Well, we saw Iron Man go all the way up almost into space. I mean, been there, done that in better films. And this film basically is nothing special. So I look at Blue Beetle, and this movie is an easy pass. I mean, this is one that people will definitely be waiting for streaming. And they'll be waiting for streaming because, again, why should I watch a movie that's not a part of the DC universe anymore? If there's no universe connection and it's not canon, then there's no reason to care about this movie at all. Now, if you want to pick up my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can find that comic on Lulu right now and pick up a paperback copy by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to pick up my other comic, Eastine No Good Deed, you can find it on Kindle for 99 cents on Amazon.com as well. And you can also pick up some of my action-packed fantasy fiction, like the ISIS series, the Eastine series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spencerella trilogy, and my vampire novel, Eternal Night, my other novels, The Thetas, and A Recipe for Success. You can find all those books on Amazon.com right now in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them in digital format at other online booksellers, like Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.